evening. I'm Janet Gordon, Director of Events at Behind the Chair. We're thrilled to have master colorist and editorial stylist Rebecca Taylor with us this evening. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to everybody or talk at everybody and discuss how I did this color. I'm very excited.
Well, this is an evening we've been waiting for a long time. We have a lot of excited attendees out there. So let me jump in here real quick before we begin the presentation. Sure. And we do have a few quick announcements that we'd like to make and a few reminders for everybody. Within the next 2 to 3 days, you'll receive an email from Behind the Chair with links to the playback along with an e-ploma that you can print and complete. So be sure to check your inbox and your spam folder. You don't want to miss this email. It will come from Behind the Chair, not that follow-up email from GoToWebinar. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll be able to enjoy this event one more time, or as often as you like. Actually, the playback link will be good for as long as you need it. Next up is to give you a quick update on Color, Cut, and Style 2015. Our event this year will be returning to the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans. We are super excited to have an amazing lineup of the world's best colorists, cutters, and stylists to join in us for 4 days of education. Sunday and Monday, the color show. Tuesday, cut and style. And Saturday, we will have a new series of look and learn classes. So we're really looking forward to this. You can get more information at behindthechair.com/theshow. Tickets will be going on sale within the next few days, and the reservations at the Hyatt New Orleans are already live, so you can, again, go to behindthechair.com/theshow and click on the venue and housing and make your reservations. Rebecca, we were just chatting, and I believe you said you attended the 2014 show. What did you think?
I did. It was really fun. I've been to a lot of hair shows. I go to the Premier Orlando a lot, but I really felt that Behind the Chair New Orleans was almost like the best of the best, or like a fancier event. I went with Guy Tang and myself. I'll just call him Guy now. I'm not going to call him first and last name every time. But we went, and we had a lot of fun, and I had to go and support him for the panel. That was a lot of fun. But I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to Chicago only in a couple weeks, and then, of course, New Orleans again. So I'm really excited about it.
That's great. Well, we'll look forward to having you there. That's a great segue into the upcoming Stylist Choice Awards coming up in Chicago. Rebecca was referring to several events at the Stylist Choice Awards, and she will be joining us there. We're excited to have you come to Chicago.
Yes, I'm excited as well. This is the second time I'm coming to Chicago. I just taught a class maybe last month. I really, really enjoyed just the people of Chicago were awesome, all the stylists that I met. And for this particular show, I'm going to be assisting Guy backstage. He's got a several hour-long segment that he's doing. This is sort of his first on-stage major education. I know a lot of people are excited about it, and I'm really pretty stoked to be helping him backstage. So we can't wait for that.
No, we can't either. And for information on the Stylist Choice Awards, which is Sunday, March 22nd, this year it's at the Airy Crown Theater. That's real important. It's a change of venue. The last couple of years it's been in the Skyline Ballroom in the West Building. But please make note this year on the McCormick Place campus in the Lakeside Center. Airy Crown Theater. Tickets are still on sale. You can get more details at behindthechair.com/SCA. And referring to the Guy Tang class coming up in Chicago that Rebecca was speaking of, as she said, for the first time in 4 years, you can see Guy Tang live on stage teaching hair color. He'll be featuring a 90-minute educational class with live demonstration models, plus a 30-minute Q&A at the end. Again, this will take place at Airy Crown Theater, McCormick Place, Lakeside Center. The Super VIP and VIP tickets are sold out. We have a few premium and general left. You can get more information at behindthechair.com/Chicago. And again, that's Sunday, March 22nd from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Airy Crown Theater. And then just a few hours later, you can have cocktails before the Stylist Choice Awards and join us there. One last quick announcement. Any more to say about Guy Tang education? I understand you will be helping him that weekend.
Nope, what you heard was a quiet little yay, because I'm really excited for it, backstage and meeting everybody. But yeah, I thought all I had to say about that. Let's talk about Stephanie. I'm
All right.
excited to meet her too because I've never met her.
Yes, we're super excited to have Stephanie Brinkerhoff joining us on Monday, March 23rd from 12:30 to 2:30. Again, details at behindthechair.com/Chicago. We do have super VIP, premium, and general tickets available. Stephanie is just the most amazing, incredible, beautiful talent. With over 5 million Pinterest followers, she's one of the most famous upstyling and wedding specialists in the social media world. Again, she will be conducting a 90-minute class with live models demonstrating long hair designs for wedding styling, plus a 30-minute Q&A at the end of her class. So again, behindthechair.com/Chicago. You have so many reasons to attend: Stylist Choice Awards, Guy Chain class, Stephanie Brinkerhoff class, and then, of course, Rebecca Taylor will be there behind the scenes, which brings us to why we are here this evening. Rebecca Taylor, owner and founder of Vivid Education, studio owner, traveling stylist and color. She's an award-winning and nationally published color specialist. She's been a national educator for over 8 years. She's social media and marketing specialist. And this girl has over 150,000 followers on, I believe you told me, just Facebook and Instagram. Is that correct?
Just those two platforms. I don't do a lot of Twitter or Snapchat right now, but yeah, on Instagram and Facebook. It's grown quite a bit in the last year, kind of overwhelming in a great way. I'm very excited about it.
Well, and it's all of the sharing and the brilliant social media marketing or sharing of information of yourself that you've done that really brought you to the attention of Mary Rector Gable, and she was thrilled to invite you to joining us for the webinar and just introduce you to our audience. So without any further ado, Rebecca, let's do it.
Yes. Well, first of all, when Mary contacted me, which my friend Guy had a hand in that, you know, he was recognized by you guys and Mary before, because I think we all can admit he's one of the pioneers of the social media hairstylist game. You know, he's found a way and a formula to get himself out there majorly, and he's a good friend of mine. And so when Mary contacted me sort of via Guy, I was honored. This is a huge platform and a huge opportunity, and I'm really excited to share with you guys sort of my philosophy on how I decide what colors to create for my clients and just the fashion color realm in general. So I'm very excited for this, however long this is going to be, 90 minutes or whatever, but I'm really excited to show some of my portfolio pictures. If any of you guys follow me now on social media, on Instagram or Facebook, I try to post a lot of my work. Not only, of course, do I love getting it out there to hopefully inspire other stylists, but I love opening the lines of communication with other stylists. I mean, no one knows, you know, sort of what we go through like another stylist. So I love engaging with you guys. And so here's a little bit of my portfolio. At the very end of this, I think if you don't follow me already, Janet's going to have some links to my social media outlet. But there it is right there, Vivid Artistic Hair Design. So yeah, here's just a few pictures of some of my work. And when we get into the slides of my client for this particular look, here's a couple other ones. Basically, I'm going to show you how I go through the process of coming up with a color scheme and the process of how you pre-lighten and what levels you have to be at to achieve certain colors. In this case, they're bright, so I don't have to go to a level 10 or, you know, like a pale yellow. I can go to level 9, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But here are just a few pictures of my portfolio.
And I think important that you were sharing with me this afternoon was your philosophy through your portfolio, the overall philosophy of making it fun, keeping it real, but more than importantly, and I think something attendees are going to love this evening, is try to keep it simple. And I think you reduce this to a way that can be a lot more, a lot less complicated, and perhaps encourage people to find the courage to just try it.
Absolutely. That is something when I teach my classes, which I do, I do private education all over, but I get so many questions about almost overthinking these colors. Like I mentioned, you have the pre-lightening process, and that really is the most technical part of the whole process. As long as you can achieve a healthy level of lift and you have the right tone for the color palette, it's all about having some fun. I custom mix all of my colors. Primarily I use Pravana, but you can use any color line, any direct dye color line. You take the guesswork out of it because it's a direct dye. You don't mix it with developer. You don't really have to worry about the conventional ways of formulating color. So I was telling Janet, I'm going to be showing my age a little bit, but whatever, 33, 34, but the Bob Ross of hair color. You know, the guy with the fro on PBS, he just does things because, well, he's passed, but he did things because he felt that way. Well, I literally say, like, a happy little tree, you know, like whatever you feel like. If you want to put a little shock of pink in the bang, do it, you know. Don't overthink this. This is fun. This is an age really right now society is embracing fashion color a lot more. So I think you should not overthink it and, you know, basically experience some more of your artistic side of being a hairstylist instead of the, you know, the very critical, like, oh gosh, what should I do, or what if this happens? If your client gives you sort of the right of way to, you know, experiment, I guess, if we will, have fun with it. This is like paint. That is how I view fashion color and direct dye. It's like paint, so have fun. And there are some technicals, you know, we'll get into the questions about how do you not have the colors bleed and how do you maintain it and what do you do, you know, to touch it up. But that's what I find in all my classes. Don't overthink it, and you really will have a fun, relaxed time with creating these colors. So I just saw the slide there with the 2015, some of the trends. First of all, when I've been specializing in this type of color from the very get-go of my personal career. This year marks 10 years that I've been a hairstylist. And from the very beginning in hair school, I've always been drawn to these type of colors. It's just really impactful for me. When I see this type of color, my eyes light up. I'm just like, this is beautiful imagery. So now more than ever, I feel like we're starting to see sort of, I don't want to say, well, I guess a comeback, because in the 70s and 80s, fashion color was kind of prevalent, but it was sort of in the underground, like punk trend or, you know, that subculture. Now we're starting to see it go way more mainstream. You're starting to see on celebrities, runway, even conservative realms, a lot of jobs and employers and things are allowing their employees to have bright colored hair. It doesn't mean that you're subculture or a punk, or I'm using air quotes right now, but, you know, bright color is being more embraced, thank goodness. And so you're seeing it on, you know, here's a couple of celebrities that have been fashion plates in the realm of hair color. Demi Lovato, I think right now her hair is actually dark, but she's had every color under the sun. Katy Perry's another one. I know a friend of mine, Justin Anderson, he's a sweetheart. He did Kelly Osbourne's Lilac. And then Kesha, she's another one. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. And so that makes me happy. 10 years of doing this, and we're finally starting to see it go a little bit more mainstream. I feel validated because I definitely was laughed at 10 years ago. Like, don't do this. It's not commercial. It's not marketable. You can't make money doing this. I kind of want to say, let's take a look around. You know what I mean? We're seeing bright color everywhere, and it's validating, and it makes me happy, and I'm just happy to have the opportunity to talk to you guys about it today.
Yep, I think the examples you've, yeah, absolutely. Just a couple comments I'm seeing. You talk about mainstream, but you go from celebrities to musicians to any type of musical artist to the fashion runways, and I think especially here, it just validates how real the designers are embracing it. And it's, I notice all the time at the grocery store, out shopping, taking the walks in the park, you see more and more people who are experimenting. And I think with any new cultural trend, they tend to begin easy and slow, and you might start to see flashes, and more you will see more of the mainstream embracing of multi-color levels. So it is very exciting, and I think your timing is so hot right now for what you're doing. It's, as you put it here, it is a brave new world in creative and fashion hair coloring.
It is. I love it. I mean, at first I thought when the 90s were coming back, I was like, this is ridiculous because my generation sort of had a hand in that. And then I started embracing it more, and that sort of leads into the whole grunge alternative. I feel like that's been pretty prevalent. And I don't know who exactly told me this sort of like trend cycle. I want to say it was Ian Michael Black. He came to one of my classes, or just sort of like observed and hung out, and I was super honored to have him there.
How cool is that?
Majorly cool. I was having a little bit of a moment. It was in New York, and he showed up, and I mean, I've been a huge fan of his work forever, and he said the same about me, and I had a little fangirl moment, like, oh my God, this guy likes me. So that was amazing. But he said something, and I'm pretty sure it was him, that sort of stuck with me. But as far as trends go and trend cycles, you have a 2-year spike, almost to where the underground is becoming a little bit more mainstream. And then you have a 2-year, like it's here to stay sort of for a 2-year period. And then you have a 2-year decline where it starts to become not, quote unquote popular or hip anymore. So you have 6-year cycles of trends. I'd say right now we're probably on the 2nd year of the spike going into mainstream. So if that's the case, if this formula holds true, then we'll have another 4 or 5 years of bright colors becoming more prevalent. So it's not going anywhere. Like I said, very validating to me, because this isn't, I say, oh, this is so easy to do, but there really is, for me, I felt like there's been 10 years of me trying to figure out ways to make this be as foolproof as possible, and I have figured that out. So maybe that's why I come across as blasé, like, oh, have fun with it. But, once you get the basics in place and you can have fun with it, I'm kind of talking in circles here, but there are a few tiny things to know about with this fashion color. And then once you know that, then you can have fun. So you guys still have a good, I think, 4+ years of experimenting with this color, and then it becoming more mainstream and more of your clients wanting to do it and wanting to sort of dabble, like throw a peekaboo here and there, put them in the fringe area, or just go completely all the way. So that's where I'm at with fashion color.
And your timing again on the education is perfect, and with our attendees here, so they're at a great place in time to be learning about how to do some of these trends. So if we go ahead and get ready, if you'll tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do here and a little bit about your client and your model that you're using.
Sure. Okay, so this model/client, she's been a long-time client of mine. We've probably done every color you can imagine. She's been on Muse for a couple years now. But her name is Kat, and the last time I saw her was that much regrowth. I wish I knew specifically, but that's a good solid 4 inches of, she's Korean descent, level 1-2 black regrowth, and then what you see on the end is previously lightened, and it was a gray that's faded out. I mean, I wish I could give you an accurate read of how long that's been. I would say maybe 7 or 8, possibly 9 weeks. So she came in, and she didn't have a whole lot of restrictions for me when I was determining what I was going to do, except, and on the next slide, I think we have some more before pictures. And then, yeah, that shows some of the hair in the front and just how pre-lightened it is. And the next slide coming up is sort of the bullet points of what I was able to do and what we wanted to do. Excuse me. So she wanted to keep all the length in the front, as much as possible anyways, because she's trying to grow her hair out. But the stuff in the back, since she can't get to me very often, and I'm all over the place traveling, she didn't really care what I did to the back of her hair cut-wise. So you really need to be mindful of what cut you're going to be doing when you're going to determine the placement of your color. So I knew I was going to cut off a good bit of the back so I could do my chameleon color technique, which is something it's a technique that I called chameleon color because every which way you part it, it looks different and sort of changes and moves it, or as you move it, the color sort of changes. So I didn't want to do anything like block coloring, especially on the back, because if I'm going to, and you'll see later, I'm going to end up shaving the back of her head. If I had block colored sections, that might be when I exposed all of that. I think I used a 2 guard. So you have to be mindful when you're going to determine what color you're going to do. So anyways, I had to pre-lighten her hair, the 4 inches of regrowth, and I did so with Lonza cream lightener.
Well, let's talk before we dive right into that. Let's talk about what was your inspiration or her inspiration. How did you come to arrive at the color choices that you made?
Yes, I don't want to forget that part. That's the fun part. The other stuff is the technical. So when it came to inspiration, like I said, she didn't have, really tough restrictions for me. Like, I have to have this color. I can't have this color. Literally, the thing she said to me was, I just don't want slime Nickelodeon green. I was like, okay, done deal. I can do that. That wasn't too hard. So we sort of were bouncing ideas back and forth, and she mentioned pinks and oranges. That's what her husband wanted to see her with, and it came to mind for me to do like a tropical sunset. And so some of these images right here are ones that I just Googled real quick, and I was telling Janet earlier, I have probably 6,000 photos on my phone to where I can't take any more photos. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I need to get rid of them, but I draw inspiration from absolutely everywhere, from nature, from sunsets, sunrises, galaxies, planets, actual hair, fashion, you name it, anything can be an inspiration photo. So in Kat's case, I wanted to do a very like pink, purple, orange, a really punchy tropical sunset motif or color palette. And then that tropical pink, she wanted a lot of pink, so that's why I saved that, I think hibiscus or whatever it is. But this is what I always do. I just grab
and that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome that her husband was supportive. That's great. And I think again, as it becomes more and more acceptable, spouses, significant others, friends, it will all share in that trend and that direction.
Well, I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, it takes some of the masses seeing it go mainstream before they're on board with it. Her husband was completely all about it. He loves for her to be, like edgy and kind of I don't know how to put it, but just very edgy. Yeah, fun, exactly. And I think gone are the days of if you have wild hair, whether it's color or like shaved or pixie, it doesn't make you any certain demographic of person except artistic and wanting to, sort of embrace your style. So I want to see a lot more of this. I really see this happening in the future. I envision a world where everybody can have sort of like the Hunger Games, not to use that as a reference, but I mean any color is available to put on your head. It's possible. So why not? That's why I did fits like this. Yeah.
That's it. And keep it healthy. Let's
exactly.
dive into, I know this is what everyone has been so excited waiting for, to learn your chameleon technique.
Yes. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about technical, it's not all fun and our artistic license and creativity and all that. These are the technicals. So the first thing that I had to do with Kat, and what all of you will have to do if you're going to perform this type of color, is you have to pre-lighten, and you have to do so patiently, slowly, and carefully in order to have these colors come across as very vibrant and saturated and not look hollow or splotchy. And if any of you have any experience coloring hair like this already, you'll know that unfortunately, if you have to put it on compromised hair, especially the ends, you'll see that the hair is very porous and will not hang on to the color on the end. So that will result in a very hollow, splotchy, dull finish. So that's first and foremost, make sure you're doing this slowly, diligently, and carefully. So what I used for Kat's hair, as you saw, that was sort of a predicament, having 4 inches of regrowth, especially level 1, 2, and having it so light on the ends, is the first thing I did was use Lonza cream lightener. And really you can use your preference of lightener. The reason I use cream lightener is because it's very emollient, like conditioning, and so it doesn't irritate her scalp. So when I applied it, I sectioned it into 4 quadrants, and I kept it away from her scalp just ever so slightly. Like I started on the cold shaft and down, to the point of demarcation where the previously lightened hair started. And then, of course, I'm going to go back and apply to the scalp. But because of body heat, you don't want that bright white, and then the mids looking, I use candy corn as a reference. It'll look like that, you know. It'll be white, orange, yellow, white. It's just a bad scene. So that's why I stay off the cold check just a little bit and then go back and apply. So, yeah, the next slide, I think, is just going to show another view of her hair being pre-lightened. Make very, very, very careful not to overlap the lightener onto the previously lightened hair. And this is the tricky part, because if you leave a band of dark, you have sort of an issue there. If you overlap, then you can potentially make that hair very brittle and it may break. So just be very, very careful. Go through little section by little section. I did not put any Olaplex in my formula because this was virgin hair, and I personally did not want to slow it down anymore. I also didn't use heat, so I processed this 30 volume and Lonza cream lightener, room temperature. I want to say, I think the next slide might show it, but 35 or 40 minutes. Yes, 35 minutes. So you'll see in that photo there, I went back and I applied to the scalp, and it's pretty quick. The Lonza cream lightener is really effective. Even though it's a cream lightener, it's like super duper quick.
And this was on, that's fantastic. This was on level 2-ish, 1 to 2 hair, and that quick. And you said no heat, no plastic cap.
Nope. And I didn't, because you don't really, I mean, if you are super careful, I guess you could put a processing cap or saran wrap or something on to trap the heat a little bit, but then you run the risk of smashing down the hair and then touching lightener on the ends, and it's just, you don't want to fool with it any more than you have to, because any of that 30 volume that touches the previously lightened hair and sits for that amount of time is just not going to be doing good things for you. So you have to go through little section by little section.
And there is no bleach. You do not pull that through to the ends at all, or do you?
I did not. No, I did not. If you felt, okay, put it this way, if she wanted to do pastels or something that would require her ends to not look so dull or like a faded silver that it was, at the bowl you could emulsify with water and shampoo and sort of do like a bleach cap or a shampoo cap at the bowl just for a couple minutes after you've lifted that dark, you know, all that regrowth area. You could have done that. But because I was going, you know, I'm going like a very vibrant sort of electric orange and pink color palette, there was no need for me to do that. And now would be the time, too, that if you have any questionability, if that's even a word, that sounds like a word, if you have any question, how about that? If there's porosity issues or integrity issues, after you wash the lightener out, you're going to want to do a deep conditioning treatment or some sort of your protein treatment or something to get the hair as healthy and even porosity as you can before you blow dry and before you put on the fashion color. Because I know a lot of people question that, like, well, you don't want to pack the cuticle with anything extra. You actually do want to get as even as an environment on that cuticle in a tight, like, healthy cuticle as you can to put these fashion colors on, because they'll absorb better. That is just what I found. If you put it on porous, dogged out, you know, frayed ends, like I said a little while ago, it'll look hollow or splotchy, or it just won't look as vibrant and as healthy. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on. I'm not going to do anything with hair that is going to damage it or leave it really dry and brittle, because the color just won't look luxe or shiny or high-end, you know. I feel like if you keep the hair in great condition and you have this mirror finish shine, that is what elevates fashion color from just like punky color you went to Hot Topic or whatever to a professional did this and your hair looks really luxe and like you paid a lot of money for it. So you want to make sure to get it really, 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 basically keep it as healthy as you can. And this point right now on Cat's hair, we have shampooed the lightener out, and because it's a cream-based lightener, I would say use kind of warmer water than normal, because you want to break up all of the, you know, the lipids from the cream lightener. Use a clarifying shampoo, just so you get all that residue or buildup off, and then bring her back to your chair, and then you want to get her completely dry before you go into the fashion color.
And so after you use do you use the clarifying shampoo every time, or it's just really based on the integrity of the hair?
Well, if I use a cream whitener, then I do, because if you've never used one before, it comes out of a tube like a paste. And so that viscosity is very oily, very waxy. And so you don't want any of that waxy buildup or residue left on the cuticle of the hair before you put the fashion color on. So anytime I use cream whitener, then I do use a clarifying to just make sure it's as, how should I put it? Just get all that buildup and that residue off.
Clean. You want it clean and then deep conditioned as well. Okay. And quick to address a lot of these questions, I'm seeing a lot of questions that Rebecca will be covering for those of you who are asking about color longevity and about bleeding of color when you go to rinse. A lot of these consistent questions, we promise.
That'll blow their minds. Just wait till I get to that.
We will get to that. And also super important, as we get close to the end of our presentation, we have a series of 8 frequently asked questions. We go back to the surveys that you completed and the most asked questions that she will answer. So be sure you hang in there with us right after her program is over. It's towards the end of the webinar, the full 90 minutes that we have. But stay tuned, because she is going to answer all of these questions that I'm seeing that are coming through. So, okay.
Yeah, I can't see them, but I can guess what they are, and you mentioned a few of them already, Janet, and I get asked these questions constantly. They were my questions before I sort of, through trial and error, answered them myself. So everything you've ever wanted to know about this realm of color, I will answer, because I guarantee you're not the only one that's going to be asking it. So everything you'll want to know will be coming up for sure.
Okay. And one last question on conditioning. Do you use heat at all? Do you put them under the dryer for the deep conditioning, or do you prefer to do it cold?
Well, if the hair was just that compromised, or you would need to do a full-on conditioning treatment, I really would hope that I wouldn't be finding myself in that position anyways. But no, I would just use a regular like deep conditioner, whatever you choose, whether it's K-Pack or Olaplex or Awapui, Paul Mitchell, whatever it is you use. Do it as a bowl, towel dry, and then come back straight away to your station and do the rest blow dry. But there's no need really to put them under the dryer and do a full conditioning treatment, in my opinion.
And then make sure the hair is completely dry. And is that dry from scalp to ends?
Completely dry. Because if you have any inconsistencies with like if you have your scalp damp or little spots in the back, the color or the fashion color is not going to take evenly. If that cuticle is already saturated or filled up with water, you're going to be less likely to, the color will be less likely to absorb and end up being very vibrant. So make sure everything is dry, bone dry for your application.
Okay. Yep. And on that deep conditioner, one last question I saw several times. When you rinse that deep conditioner, do you do an extremely thorough job, or do you tend to like to leave just a tiny bit of residue in there just to give it a little bit of protection, or do you not feel the need for that?
Well, personally, I feel like leaving it on the cuticle is really not going to benefit in the long run, because it's just hanging out on the outside and will be rinsed away anyways. So I thoroughly clarify to get the residue of the cream whitener out, and then I deep condition, maybe let the conditioner sit on for about 5 minutes at the bowl, rinse with cool water to keep that cuticle really compact, and then I just go right back to the chair and blow dry. So I don't leave anything, like any residues or serums or anything in after pre-lightening and rinsing and coming back in preparation for the fashion color. So no, I don't put anything on the hair extra.
Yep. It looks like you're about to get into the really fun part now.
Yes. This is the part that I like the most, obviously, and you should all like the most too, because this is you getting to be an artist, essentially. But one more detail about the technicality of pre-lightning. Let's see here. So you really need to be mindful of what level you're lifting to when you're determining what colors you can put on the hair. I wouldn't lift to a level 8 orange, Cheeto colored, and think there was any possible way that I would be able to do a silver or a pastel blue or, you know, anything sheer or light or cool. You know, you have to be very mindful of what level you're getting to tell your client what to be able to do. Like if you have a client that says you can do whatever you want, but unfortunately their hair won't get past, let's say, an 8 or a 9, their hopes and dreams of a gunmetal or a silver or, like I said, a pastel blue aren't going to happen that appointment. So you definitely want to be firm with your client. Be kind and honest and informed and firm. Tell them it may take a couple appointments. If you can't achieve, let's say silver is very popular right now. If you can't achieve a level 10, a cool, true platinum level 10 in one appointment to do this silver, don't think you're going to just put silver over top and wing it and hope that it's a true silver. It's going to be a strange, muddy, dingy, beige color. So be honest with your client. Tell them it might take a couple appointments, but you'll achieve it the healthy way, and they'll thank you in the long run. So for this particular color, again, I'm doing shades of pink and violet and orange. So I only, I mean 9's pretty light, but 9, like a yellow, is where I got to be able to put on these colors. And the next slide is talking about the actual shades that I created. I use all different kinds of direct dyes. For this particular look, I used Pravana, Vivid, neons, and pastels. But Kenra has a new one, Intensities, Joyful Intensities, even Manic Panic I've used before. There, I'm sure, are going to be some fun other lines coming up in the future. So yeah, so any direct dye lines, in my opinion, once you've achieved the right tone, it's like paint. You need to have fun with it like you are an artist and you have a blank canvas and like you're painting. I don't like to mix any colors, very seldom now, so I just mix colors straight out of the tube, especially the jewel tones, like the violet, the green, the blue, because they are very, very pigmented. So when you hear all these horror stories about after you get your hair colored, these colors, and they go to shampoo their hair and they turn their entire tub, all their towels, all their clothing, their face, their neck, whatever, the color of the hair, you know, whether it's purple or blue or whatever, I find 9 times out of 10 that's because people have used these colors straight out of the tube. So I found out long ago that a little bit goes a long way. They're very saturated, very pigmented. So when you're doing these jewel tones, mix them with clear or a lighter shade. For instance, if you're doing a purple, I wouldn't just use straight purple or violet. I would put clear in a bowl, or depending on what shade of purple that you want to achieve, put pink or pastel blue or what have you, but put that as a base in the bowl, and then you add the darker pigment to it until you achieve the shade that you want. So that's a tip. Never use these colors. I won't say never, but, you know, very seldom use these colors straight out of the bowl, and you'll avoid bleeding and transfer and having these colors be a holy terror to get out of clothes and bed sheets and all that. So
let me jump in real quick. For those who aren't familiar with direct dye, explain to them you do not use developer with this. You just straight out of
Correct.
the tube color. There are a few people asking about that.
Yes, direct dyes or fashion color or semi-permanent color, or that's the category of straight out of the tube. It's basically the suspension is like a conditioning or a blank color base with pigment added to it. There's no oxidation that happens. So it's basically pigment or paint. And so when I use that analogy of like this is like painting, it's really just pigment in a tube. There's no developer that you mix with it. The only ratios that you really have to be mindful of is you as an artist, what you're trying, you know, what tone you're trying to achieve. So I custom mix most all of my colors. So the ones that I mixed for this look I've got pink, which, let's see. Let me see exactly what pink I used. I don't even remember. Okay, yes I do. I'm trying to look at this and tell you at the same time. That's how rough it is for me. I never write anything down. I mix things just like if I were, a painter. That's exactly what I do. And I find that you sort of use your brain as a colorist, as a muscle, and you have to flex it. And so a lot of people, I am not included, a lot of people, though, write down all their formulas in their profile book. I have never done that. Never have I done that. So even natural color, I formulate every client, every time, every appointment, every scenario. So the same goes for this. So instead of writing down, oh, I put a squirt or an inch of violet and a half a tube of clear or whatever, I go visually. So let's say I ran out of a color. You're looking at one of those bowls, and I need to find, or I need to produce some more of that color in order for the head of hair to look even. I'll leave just a little smear of it on the side of the bowl, and I will go mix more from visually knowing what colors it took to make that color. So that's how I do it. I never write anything down. I'm not saying that's what you should do. A lot of people need that as a reference, but I feel like it keeps me sharp, and I know how to mix color and how to formulate because of it being visual for me. But
and you've done it. You've done it so many times. It's like anything else, as you said earlier. It's just practicing, and it's gaining your confidence. Do you use clear in every bowl?
Not all of them. The neon pink and the neon orange. Now, my experience with the neons in the Pravana line is that the green and the yellow are on point. They are super duper saturated. Little bit goes a long way. They're highlighter intense. But the pink is kind of sheer, almost translucent. So I think the neon pink is not diluted or cut with anything. The neon orange is also not diluted or cut with anything. And then that pink you see in the lower left-hand corner is just straight up pink and a little magenta, because pink on its own, because there's pink, magenta, neon pink. There's all different kinds, but I don't even think I added pink, clear to any of these except the violet. That's the only one that I added clear to, so pink and clear. I know this sounds crazy, and you guys are probably overwhelmed, like, what the heck are you talking about? What are all these colors? But that's sort of my point. You get the gist of the color palette. You saw my inspiration pictures. I think you should have a little fun with this, because it's not a regular, like a customary formulation situation. You mix it like paint, so everybody's formula should be different, and it should be unique to you, and nobody can duplicate exactly 100% what you're doing because you're the artist. So while I have these here listed, and you can use them as a reference, I sort of urge you guys to have a little fun with this and make your own interpretation of what a coral would be, or what a violet would be, or whatever, and just have a little bit of fun with it.
And then that gives you an example. There were questions about what do the colors actually look like when they are applied to the hair, and here you have it.
Yes, I have a lot of photos of the sort of the process of this coming, into the end result or in fruition. But what I do for my chameleon color technique, and again, I sort of developed this particular method because I want it to look very different. And honestly, I think we all know, the more versatility that you put into one head of hair and one look, sort of the more that you switch it up and the more organic you make it, there's less room for error there is. I know that sounds like, oh, well, that's the easy way out. But truly, I mean, if you're doing one color on someone's head, if you pre-lightened it and you're doing one color, the odds of you having an area on that head of hair that looks hollow or inconsistent or just out of place are so much higher than if you use multiple tones. And they don't have to be crazy different. It doesn't have to be like green, pink, purple. It can be, a darker shade of pink, a mid shade of pink, and a cooler or a warmer shade. So even switching it up a slight bit but using 3 tones and, adding all that dimension on one head is way more beneficial for you and the look of this color in the long run than if you just try to slap one color roots to end on the head. So that's where I'm going with this chameleon color technique. And what I do, what I personally think is if you base the look with one color, and generally it's deeper or darker, it sort of gives it more of an elevated look. I'm very into the shadow root or there being depth at the base. I think in most cases, not always, because people have lighter colors sometimes in the color they dye their hair. But I feel like a little bit of a shadow root or having depth looks more organic or natural, and then having that darker color also sort of anchored to their facial features and their darker eyebrows. It just looks more balanced, in my opinion. So I've used the Wild Orchid is what I chose for my base color for this particular look. And I start at the nape, at the back, moving my way forward towards the front hairline. And I'm making really, really sure that every section I take, I'm wiping my gloves off very diligently. Because if you have Wild Orchid or whatever color on your gloves and you touch that pre-lightened hair, that just is going to be a boo-boo for you to have to correct in the long run or make Wild Orchid from root to end. So make sure you wipe your gloves off every change of color and every time you're going to grab that pre-lightened hair, because you have to try to be as tidy as you can with it. So,
and what do you use to wipe? Do you use a damp paper towel or a cloth?
Just a regular towel. Just a regular towel, yeah. If I'm doing a head of hair that's just very, very dense and long, it's kind of blown my mind before, but after all the glove wiping, I will feel like the towel is saturated with a whole tube of color. I mean, you really have to be careful because you have to get your hands in there and you have to, you know, make sure you're hands-on, but you also have to make sure your gloves are wiped between every section. And so on these slides, I'm going through and just making sure everything's saturated, and don't keep it too perfect. Like when you're doing a base touch-up, don't make sure, you know, you don't want it to look like a perfect straight line. So go through and give it a little bit of irregularity, so in the long run it'll look more natural or organic. You don't want everything to look perfectly structured. And then this slide here, yeah, I basically just said that. Just make sure you wipe your gloves off as much as possible. And then when you go back through, after you've done your base color, this is sort of the fun part where you get to take all those different other colors and you're deciding where to place them. I take little sections. This one's a little bit wider, but you'll take sections about maybe an inch and a half base diameter, just irregular little chunks of hair. And I don't use a brush at this point. I mean, I think you might see a slide where I'm using the brush one time, but for the most part I'm using my gloves, and you take the color and you really, really emulsify it and meet whatever color you're putting on the ends up to the Wild Orchid. And you want to get in there with your hands and just really feel, you're feeling the textures, and you're feeling, you can tell by feeling the hair, even with gloves on, if that hair is becoming saturated with color. So I like doing that better than using a brush because you really don't get in there and you really can't tell. And this is the perfect way of color melting and blending, in my opinion. So right here I have the magenta, and then you'll see in the next several slides I'm just moving up the head towards the front hairline, and I'm alternating different colors. Here I have a coral that I made, and then wiping my gloves off and moving up the head. I think this was the only time that I used the brush, and I think that was for show, to be honest with you. So once I do the base color, I like getting in there with my hands, just straight out of the bowl. Do I grab the color and really work it into the sections. And then
how do you keep the universal question? You already know what I'm going to ask. How do you keep, as you are finishing sections and laying them down, how are you keeping one color from bleeding onto the next below it?
I'm being very delicate and gentle. I don't use any foil. I don't use any mesh or saran wrap or anything. This is very free form, free hand. So I will just use this yellow section as an example. I grab it, I make sure it's very emulsified and worked in and blended, and then I just delicately set it down and then work to the section to the right of it and then on top of it. And then you'll see as I move forward in slides that the hair is just gently sort of just laying back in the natural, I guess, gravity is just letting it lay there. And you don't want to smash anything down. You don't want to comb anything down. You just want to lay it there, and there's no bleeding that will happen. And I know the next big question is, how do you rinse this? And we'll get to that. But how do you rinse this and not have it all bleed or blend together? And I just had this sort of moment of clarity about 5 years ago when it came to doing these type of colors, because I had the same questions. I'm like, how do you not make a sloppy mess when you have all these colors next to each other, because they are so saturated and pigmented? So I guess the best way to explain it is, for one, like I said, I don't use any of that straight pigment right out of the tube, so it's not as saturated. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but when I rinse it, I don't overthink it. I don't have foils to mess with. I don't have, like these isolated sections to fool with. I just rinse really quickly and really fast, and you'll see that there's no transfer or bleeding. The only time that I personally run into a problem with transfer of color or bleeding is when you are doing a very saturated, pigmented, bright color with blonde and platinum all in one. And there's really no magic solution to that except be very, very careful and isolate it. Try to rinse some one way and rinse some another way, cold water. And then even then, there's no way that you can even have them avoid doing it when they wash their hair the first time. So if I have a client, a platinum client, that wants a bright color in their hair, first of all, I'll try to be strategic and have it be in the back, like peekaboos, or in the front, and put their head forward in the bowl and wash it that way. Just try to use gravity on my side instead of against me. But basically tell the client that you will see some sort of transfer or bleeding of color for the first couple washes, but it'll eventually, settle back into blonde will be blonde, and then that color will be that color. But that's the only scenario that I would say is the tricky one, that there's no, no foolproof way to have that not happen. But this, with all these colors, it is so easy, and you're going to see in a minute when I shampoo it. So that's what I'm doing in these slides.
A good example here. You can see actually the way you're applying it with your hands, and almost, squeezing may not be the right term, but the way you're sectioning and applying it, it almost creates its own structure so that it stands out from the head, so that there is not that layering sense to it.
Exactly. So every little section is its own little, that's even better illustration. You sort of just, every little section, which, like I said, it varies from an inch to an inch and a half face diameter. Every little section sort of stays contained because of the way the color has been applied. You lay it down on top of the one before it, and because it's already saturated with color, there's no real way for it to absorb the color to its left or right or underneath, because it's already saturated with color as best as it can be. And then,
now, are you using all different colors in the same row across sections, or are you alternating two different colors for each layer that you're doing? Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely not keeping it. That's what I was saying earlier about, you want to try to make it as diversified as possible. So if in the end there are any differences, the differences are hidden in the diversity of all the different shades that you're choosing. So if I picked one straight horizontal section at the nape, and then the next section up was perfectly horizontal and straight and all the same color, and then so on and so forth up the head, then all of those sort of planes of color would visually fall to a certain point, and you'd be able to see more flaws. So by more sections and more versatility in the colors, then it's going to look more organic and blended and almost natural in a sense when it's down and dry and styled. So It's just basically whatever I'm feeling at that moment. And one little tip about, you can do what you want. This should be, between your client and yourself, your artistic sort of expression. But one thing that I don't do, and I am mindful of, is I wouldn't do, let's see here, as an example. Let's say I base this with purple. I wouldn't take a yellow or a gold or an orange and blur that color with purple, because obviously on the color wheel those colors don't jive, and I turn into it would turn into some sort of mud or gray or not satisfactory industrial kind of color. I mean, that's all well and good. You know, there are some cases I believe that would look nice, but it's not conventional. So just be mindful when you're blending certain colors together. Don't do like a gold and a purple or a green and a red, because you know we know how that ends up. So that's the one little tip that I can say when you're selecting what colors to do on what section.
Mm-hmm. And do you blend or melt those colors together when you meet that base, that wild orchid base color, or do you keep kind of a strong line of difference there?
No, I melt and blur that very much. Everything's very blurred. So sometimes I'll even take a little bit more wild orchid, and because the base color was applied first, it sort of saturates with it differently. So I'll go back in with some more wild orchid and sort of blur that line down a little bit and then add whatever color. You can see the one on the left, I'm adding coral. So I might have put a little bit of wild orchid, you know, to bring the base down a tiny bit, and then I'll go in with the coral. I'm trying to think what else oh yeah, another thing that I do with this chameleon color technique is just so you don't have wild orchid at the root or the base only, I will take some sections and make those wild orchids that come from root to ends, just to sort of incorporate the base color in there as well.
Right. And then, let's see, some of the other questions here. Sectioning. Do you use a comb or do you use your fingers to section and separate?
My fingers. I'm very, I don't know if it's rebellious. I don't know what it is. I have 6.5 years experience as an educator with Joico, and they were very, very structured. I mean, you almost had to measure, like this foil needs to be 3 inches from the temple of this area, and the foil can't be folded or, you know, what have you. I guess because of that sort of background, which I love that I have that sort of structured background, but because of that, now that I'm independent, I'm very like, do what you feel, do what feels good, you know. So I have the backup of knowing what to do, but I'm very rebellious and I don't like doing it. So I don't like to section too much. I like to do things very organically, what feels right. So you won't see a lot of, you know, like perfect sections or clips or combs. Just get in there and get your hands in it and do what feels right. So yes, no combs.
Express yourself. Express yourself.
Yes,
I think analogy. I'm sorry, the analogy used earlier, thinking of them as you're thinking of this as creating your artist's palette, using the dyes as your colors, whatever type of color you choose to use, and just getting in there and painting. And as you select those inspirations, you keep those visions. And if you have to have that photograph nearby to keep your mind focused on that inspiration, why not? And have that and just start adding the colors. And I can see where I can see both sides. There are colorists, as there are people who are very structured and like exact systems and diagrams. And I think you could start this way if that made you feel better. But ultimately, as you grow in your confidence level, then I think you just go for it like you've done, and you do what feels right in your artistic creativity. And that's when it really gets fun.
And I do want to touch on there being a contrast here, because I'm not just rebel only. You know, there have got to be rules in place, and there have to be reasons why you do what you do chemically, and, you know, technical reasons. You know, when I mentioned about pre-lightning and the fundamentals of these tones and what works together and what doesn't, I have plenty structure in place. You know, there has to be the dualism of structure and chaos, and sort of the way that I come up with these colors, I say in my classes, it's sort of like organized chaos. But there definitely are rules in place. The hair has to be incredibly healthy, or the color won't pop or look as luminous and shiny. So it's not just, like I said, it's not just all being rebellious. But when there is the time for creative freedom and for you to express yourself as a colorist and as an artist and a stylist, take every opportunity to do that. You know, that's the fun part of our industry. Even when you're doing natural colors, when I balayage, so this this feels good to put this lighter piece here. Or, you know, this contrast would look better next to this shadow. You know, I really take every opportunity to put my own personal touch on it or my spin on it and have some foresight about, okay, I'm doing this because, you know, it'll look like this in the long run. We have one of the most expressive, fun, you know, professions I think there is out there, and I understand people are going to need structure and, you know, need to know the reasons why 100% of the time. That's just the way they are. But if you allow yourself to have a little bit more fun and open up and sort of take risks, I think your clients will appreciate it in the long run, and they'll feel more like they're seeing an artist versus just the service provider. I mean, we live in a, I guess, society now where being a hairstylist is pretty badass. I'm just going to say it. I mean, we have one of the best professions in the world, and why not be the rock stars that we sort of are privileged to be now? So have fun with it and create things that you haven't seen before.
Absolutely. And as you're doing this creative work, in a case like this particular model, how long did the application take? Do you recall approximately how long would application take for this?
With pre-lightning too, the whole thing from pre-lightning to being done with the haircut, about 4.5 hours. But just application of the fashion color, like on dry hair, from starting application to needing for her to process, probably 45 minutes. So wow. 4.5 hours total, and I did a lot with a haircut. She said she wanted it shaved, and then I said, let's shave it some more. So there was a lot of back and forth with it. But start to finish, 4.5 hours, and that's with dealing sort of with that corrective issue of pre-lightening the regrowth and the styling and all. 4.5 isn't too bad for all of this. Right. And you also, I want to touch on charging. You need to charge what you're worth, because this is not a quick process. You know, you have to pre-lighten, you have to shampoo, you have to dry, you have to reapply, process, dry, style. So charge what you're worth and charge for your time and your expertise and your artistry. But I wish I could tell you exactly what to charge. I mean, I can tell you what I charge. For something like this on this length of hair, probably $175 to $200, but it's going to be regional. You know, if you're in New York City in a high-end salon, you're going to be charging way more than I am in Northwest Florida. So, but whatever it is, charge for your time and charge what you're worth, and don't feel bad about it. You know, I mean, we're professionals and we put in the time, and you guys are investing in your time by listening in for this webinar and going to the shows. So I really feel that people should not be scared to charge what they're worth.
And then a lot of questions about heat versus no heat. In this example, you recommend no heat.
No heat. I never use heat for processing direct dyes. What's happening physically when you use heat is you're expanding the cuticle, and direct dyes only absorb so much. I mean, there's no cuticle expansion really. It's just a matter of sort of staining. So the most effective way for the color to last is just to stay the course. 25, 30 minutes is the minimum. But I've been double booked before and had fashion colors done someone's hair for an hour, you know, an hour and 45 minutes. And you won't do any harm. It's not progressive, but there will come a time where it's just not going to absorb anymore. Heat's not necessary. Like I said, what you're doing is expanding the cuticle, and then if you rinse it without closing that cuticle back down, the color, if there was any absorption from, you know, the expanded cuticle, it's just going to fall right out of the cuticle. So I don't even fool with heat. 25, 30 minutes on average, room temperature, good to go. And then it's time to shampoo. And so
and they're waiting for this next part.
Oh, I know. This is the one that I get asked most, and this sort of came from necessity for myself. I didn't want to fool with foils anymore because I feel like I was taking all this time foiling all these bright colors only to take them to the shampoo bowl to try to meticulously take out these foils for the colors, like the water to go into one foil and one color to, you know, taint another color, and then it just is a muddy mess. So I quit with the foils when I developed this method, and then I take them right back to the shampoo bowl, and then highest water pressure you can, like blast it on them, freezing cold water, and quick. Those are the stipulations to making sure that there's no transfer or bleeding. And then you asked me when we did the run through, Janet, like how do you get this off their scalp? This is different than an oxidated color. You'll have the rare case where someone's skin is very porous and they'll sort of stain a little bit. But 9 times out of 10, if you look on the slide on the left, it looks very berry colored, very dark. And then you see after I've rinsed a little bit on the right, and you can see her scalp just fine. I do not shampoo at all for this. I mean, I had someone at a class ask me, well, what if they come in, their hair is really grubby, and they just absolutely need a shampoo? You don't have to worry about that because you've already pre-lightened and clarified, and so you don't even have to worry about that. You just rinse very, very well, and then give them a good scalp massage, which gets all the residual color off of their scalp, and then lightly condition the ends, and then give it one more final rinse, and you can already start to see those colors. I mean, there they are. They're all separate. The yellow still has stayed vibrant. You'll start to see the differences in the oranges and the pinks come together after it's dry. Right now it just looks wet and you can't tell, but you can definitely tell the difference between the depth of the yellow, the purple, some of the orange, the pink. And then you don't want to dawdle for this part. Don't dilly-dally. Do not wrap it up in a towel. Don't clip it in a little bun, because when that hair is wet, it still has the ability to transfer, bleed on one another. So the first thing you want to do is like squeeze the moisture out, go right back over to your stylist chair, and blow dry. I don't even section and clip out of the way to cut the hair wet. I just get it dry, and then I cut after. Because the sooner you get that hair dry, the sooner you don't have to worry about any bleeding or transfer or any issues like that. And I almost feel like, whether there's too much validity to this or not, I almost feel like there's a curing phase where if you don't shampoo your hair or re-wet it 48 hours or so after you do a color like this, I feel like it almost has time to cure and really settle into the hair. There's no real like neutralizer or process or anything like that, but I don't like shampooing the hair really soon after having a service like this done. So rinse it, like I said, I went through that process, go back, blow dry, cut the hair, and then tell your client for them not to shampoo for about 48 hours after the service.
And quick question before we jump to the next, and again, home care is also, maintaining the longevity in home care is a question frequently asked as well, but do you use any type of styling lotion or styling aid? It seems like you would be massaging the hair if you did that. So when you go to do the blow dry, do you just start blow drying as is?
You can comb through the hair, and you can massage a product through the hair. That's fine. That's not going to do anything detrimental. When you subsection it off and wrap it in a tight clip, or like an alligator clip or something, then all those lighter pieces have the ability to soak up the brighter. So, but I take the time that it needs to put some serum. I'll definitely put some serum on the end, so it's really shiny and luminous. I like Kenra's blow dry spray. It smells really good. I think I like every single Kenra product there is. It smells amazing. And then, yeah, so just basically style as you normally would, minus sectioning and clipping and kind of farting around a long time before you start blow drying. Just get right into the styling part. And then at-home care, for what you're going to tell your clients, or if you are taking care of your own fashion color, cool and cold water is going to be your best friend. It's been rough for me, as it is for you guys if you have to endure this as well, but it's been gnarly for the winter months. But if you want your color to last, cool or cold water is a necessity. So when you shampoo, which should only be 1 to 2 times for me, that's how I feel like it lasts the longest, 1 to 2 times a week, use cold water, shampoo, and conditioner. Make sure there's no sulfates. And then what's really sort of like a hidden adversary, I guess, against these colors is the sunlight. I was telling you, a little earlier I was telling you about a client that I had. I did her hair bright colors, blue, green, purple, the whole thing, and she went to Disney, and she never wet her hair. She never got on any water rides. She didn't shampoo her hair. She just was walking around Disney for 5 or 6 days with her hair color exposed. And when she came back to me, this is like the broad Florida summer sunshine. When she came back to me, her hair had pre-lightened, or all of the color had gone away, and it was back to blonde, and she never once wet it. And that was sort of my turning point for, oh my gosh, the sun can really wreak havoc. So that's, like I said, that's the hidden, the ways that your hair, other than just washing it, can fade. So use some sort of sun milk, some UVA, UVB spray or protectant, or even just a head cover or a bandana or a hat or something like that to cover your hair color for it to last. And use dry shampoo between shampoos because, again, I mean, if you can make it stretch by not shampooing your hair, why not? And then keep your hair very conditioned because conditioned hair is going to hang on to the color better. We all know, I'll just use the natural color as an example. Let's say you have red in your hair and the ends of your hair need a trim and they're porous and they look a little dry and dull. The color always fades out of the damage to the porous parts of your hair first. So if you keep it conditioned, the color will generally stay more vibrant longer. So those are my tips to maintain it. And on the average, the color that I do for my clients, you're seeing 5 to 12 weeks, sometimes longer. But 5 weeks, 6 weeks, that's average for natural hair color. So it's not, I hear a lot of people say, like, oh my God, it was gone in a week or 2 weeks. What's the point of this? You know, all that work for nothing. But on average, it's 5 to 12 weeks that I have these bright colors last. And another point about why they look better longer is you have all of this dimension of color, so it gradually fades out, still looking pretty, just a lighter or a different version of itself versus one color or it's 2 colors, roots to ends. Then it looks a little shabbier, you know, because it doesn't have that interest or the dimension of colors going on.
And then as far as styling, you show us here how you're doing the blow drying. Did you use any styling products prior to blow drying in this case?
I used what did I use? Kenra blow dry spray and a little bit of heat serum, and I can't remember which, but whichever serum you guys prefer. Just something cute like Diamond Oil, Redken, or whatever, just whatever you prefer to keep the ends shiny and compact. And then that is the haircut. She's very adventurous, so I gave her what she wanted. I kept all the length on the front, and actually to me it kind of looks longer than the before picture just because of the, like, it's an optical illusion. I've taken all the bulk or the mullet sort of aspect of the back off, and she can go a really long time before needing this maintained because the quickest thing, you know, when you're growing out a bob, the thing that gets most annoying quickest is that nape area. It tends to get mullety on you and start hitting the collar and feeling bulky. So she suggested that I just shave it up, and I didn't hesitate. And this is a really modern interpretation of a bob, I'd say. And there you can see all the different colors.
And the blue is so striking, and I think there were several questions. And again, just to reiterate, what about the blue? When you were doing that sectioning with your hands and applying that color, truly to keep that blue from bleeding into the other sections, it was just being ever so careful in the way you just laid that color down. Okay.
Yep.
Fascinating. Like wow.
If you fold
you think bird of paradise, the tropical flower.
Yeah, sure. I mean, between you've seen a Hawaiian sunset, like those pictures I have, that just reminds me of, I've seen some of those sunsets in LA too that have the purple and the pink and the yellow and the orange. Between it being floral or a sunset or a bird, whatever does it for you. But I love those colors together. I think it's very flattering on her skin tone.
Well, and I think it's important to know, you talked about the artistic placement and the creativity in what you did, and how this wasn't purely defined like a highlight situation where you wanted exactness to this. There is this free-form spirit in this that certainly helps create that look that you were going after. So what I'm hearing and what you're doing is to practice and to not be afraid. You've got to try it. So whether you use mannequin heads, whether you use friends and colleagues, whatever you need to, find kindred spirits in this and work with each other.
And if you don't want to just dive right in and pre-light an entire head of hair and go for it, like you see me do on most of the pictures that I post, you can do like a triangular section by the occipital, and pre-light in that triangular section and do the technique that I'm showing you, this chameleon color, on just like a tiny block under there. You can do the same concept, the same principles, but have this technique be a peekaboo or a block coloring within a natural palette of dark hair or whatever you're doing. But start small and just have fun with it. Like Janet said, just have a good time and experiment. I'm all about trying to create trends versus follow them. That's me and my rebellious. I don't know. I've always been weird like that. Just I'll show you. I don't know. It's not a negative way, but
no. It's your spirit. It's the freedom of your artistry and expression, and I think it's important to those attendees out there who are they are feeling this urge, this want, this desire to be this way, to just go for it and make it happen. That's the only way it will. But on the flip side, for those of you who are a little shy, you want to introduce this to clients. You don't have to start like this, but start somewhere. Yeah. Start, as you suggested, with just peekaboo colors here and there. We'll actually talk about that as we get into some of the frequently asked questions. How do you introduce these concepts, say from taking baby steps up to full-blown artistry like this? How do you do that with your clients? So we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But this is phenomenal, and she looks like she's just loving it and having so much fun with it.
I personally had fun. I know she felt amazing. Just how all you stylists out there, that moment when they see themselves and they are feeling themselves and they're giving themselves that like blue steel Zoolander look in the mirror. She was feeling hot, and that made me feel super good. So not only was I fulfilled as the artist, but I also had that fulfillment of the service provider. So it goes hand in hand, and she is adorable, and she's one of those clients that we all have them, but like I said, she's my muse, and when I move, I'm going to have to find a new crop of these people that'll let me have fun like this. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing this color. It was a lot of fun.
It's beautiful, and you see the contrast here, of course, is just tremendous, but really important. We only have about 15 minutes left, and Rebecca's going to share a little bit with us how she has developed such a following for what she's doing, and then again, we've got to get to those frequently asked questions because some of them she hasn't quite covered tonight yet. So, Rebecca, share with us what do you do to brand and spread the word about Rebecca? How do you do that?
Okay, so first of all, from the very get-go, I have been on social media. Back in MySpace days, I started taking pictures of my work, putting my work out there, and then went to Facebook when that was the hot thing to do, and then now Instagram, and whenever there's a next new something or other, I'm going to be on that too, because social media is a way that all of us, the stylists, or really whatever your market is, to get your brand or your just your culture, whatever it is you're doing, you can get it out there for free on these outlets. Everybody is, for the most part nowadays, everybody's on social media. So why not utilize these tools to whatever you want to do, whether it's getting more clients, which I think should be everybody's first and foremost goal. I think you should start, with your community and your salon and grow that way. And if if one of your top priorities is being famous, quote unquote, that's really not the way to achieve sustainable success, I feel like. Not only do I feel like people sort of can sense that I don't know how to put this. This wasn't my goal ever for myself to be quote unquote famous, like Instagram famous, Facebook famous, whatever. I just love what I do. I love doing hair. I love networking with stylists, and I want to always be true to myself and what feels right for me. And in my case, my sort of brand or my culture is connecting with stylists, with sort of keeping it real. You know, I always want to, you know, reach out to stylists, and I'm a stylist. That's how I want to educate. That's what I do. And the bright colors, that's my culture, and positivity, and help each other out, you know, build each other up, not tear each other down. Those are the qualities of my brand. So, you know, that was what I set out to do, and then it's just turned into what it is now, and I can't be happier or more gracious that it's turned into what it is. But I never was like, I'm going to be famous, you know, because I think people would be able to tell that, and that's not what you should set out to do. So you should take all of your favorite work, the work that you've taken your most pride in. Make sure you watermark that work and identify it as yours. So if someone looks at your body of work or your portfolio, they're going to be like, oh, that's so-and-so. You know, I know their work. So that's what you really want to do. You want to build your brand. Who are you? Like, who are you as a stylist? Like, do you like doing more natural stuff? Do you like doing bright stuff? Do you like doing all color in general? You know, if you really want to set yourself apart and you want to be noticed, be unique and be original, and work on just becoming a fantastic stylist and take care of your guests. That is what your goals should be when it comes to social media, and finding, you know, the best way to brand yourself. And well, let's use Instagram as an example. Like, when you go to your page, do you see a picture of your dog, some hair, maybe some hair, your dog, your food? You know, maybe clean up your presentation of yourself as a entity, or, you know, as a brand. It's fine if you want to do a bunch of personal stuff on your page. That's completely up to you. But just, I guess, be mindful of what you're conveying. Is it more business? Is it more personal? Maybe you should have just a business page and then just a personal page. You know, so you have to. It's actually pretty. You know, once you start using social media as a way to market yourself. So be mindful about what you're doing. Think about what you're trying to convey. Be nice to everybody. Don't be a jerk, because jerks don't go very far in the industry. There's that saying, the world is a small town, so you want to be nice.
Yep.
And you want to be organic with things. Don't, in my opinion, when, you know, when people are just begging for shout-outs and stuff, in my world, that doesn't mean a whole lot of nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I want to work with people. I want to become friends with people. I want genuine relationships, and for things to happen organically. I'm not, like I said, I'm not like, oh, got to be famous. So I think as soon as people sort of knock off that mentality, or that being their top priority, and care more about the art form of being a hairdresser and their brand and things like that, I feel like they'll go further, and that sort of genuine sense of who they are will be more appealing than like, ooh, I got to be famous. Because in this day and age, really anybody can be. It just takes something to go viral or whatever. So instead of being obsessed with that, be obsessed with being good and let things fall into place like they should fall into place. So those are my tips.
And then a few quick word on hashtag and networking, and we just have a very few minutes to blow through those 8 questions. We want to dive into that, but you talk about the importance of hashtagging keywords and then networking.
Yes. If you're trying to network with manufacturers and brands and just get yourself out there, it's, you know, like I said, that doesn't necessarily have to make you famous. It just makes you, and helps you start being credible and getting your work out there. You can hashtag BTC pics, hashtag hair, stylist, hair of Instagram, hair trends, all of those different ones. And to be honest with you, the easiest way to do it, if you guys want to save yourself some time, just go copy and paste what I do, because I always do the same thing. So it's all those keywords at behindthechair.com, you know, all the manufacturers that you use, the artists. If you looked to another artist as inspiration, you know, give them a nod so they can see your work. You know, just that's how you stay connected on Instagram if you want to, you know, tag your work.
Right. And then, of course, network. It's always, whatever industry you're in, networking with your peers, photographers, the makeup artists, the models. I'm sure you've done this with anyone you've partnered with to build your portfolio.
Yes, that's how I started. I mean, if I didn't, we all have to start somewhere to build our portfolio. And if you want to have a little bit more fun than just taking, okay, I'm done with your hair, client, let me take a picture of this, and, you know, it could be pretty basic. It's fun to network with models and photographers and makeup artists and, you know, set designers, clothing designers, and have fun with it. And if you're interested in editorial work, that's how you get your foot in the door, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, if your questions, and again, right after this slide, we're diving into those last really important questions, you can follow Rebecca on her Instagram, on her Facebook, and if your questions didn't get asked this evening, I'm sure she'll be happy to interact with you over the next coming days and weeks.
Exactly. And the one thing, I guess there's something wonky going on with the YouTube one, but if you have any interest in any of my private education or a class, you can email vivideducation@yahoo.com. And then on my YouTube channel, which I have several videos on how to remove Vivid, which we didn't even get into, and stuff like that. It's Stylist. What's that? Oh, are we? Okay, but the YouTube is Stylist Rebecca Taylor. I don't know why that's going vertical, but that's what that is.
Okay, Stylist Rebecca Taylor on YouTube, and then, of course, Facebook, Vivid Artistic Hair Design as well. So let's dive real quick into these. The big question.
Oh,
what's the best way to remove fashion? These were the Q&As that we were looking at. From Aaron in Sacramento, what's the best way to get those fashion colors out once you've had them in?
Well, there are several ways, but about a year ago, I had this revelation with clear and all the uses of clear. But one such use is taking a permanent clear or a lightning booster, 000, you know, just some sort of oxidative permanent clear, and mixing it with 20 volume or 30 or 10, just depends on the texture of your hair and the intensity of the color. But that is one way to remove and break up that pigment, is a permanent clear developer mixed 1-to-1 ratio. It's basically ammonia in a tube, and you can start breaking away the pigment and you can get rid of it that way. That's one way, and then manufacturers suggest lightener and a low volume developer. So that's another way. What I do is usually the clear method first, depending on the tone. Reds are always a pain in the butt to get out of there. Certain, let's see, neon colors, they can be difficult too. But I'll use my clear method, and then if there's any residual, then I'll go back in with the low volume and lightener and get that out of there. And I have a YouTube video that outlines my clear method. If you guys have heard about this, this is one of those prime examples of something going viral. I started this hairstylist education forum, HEF. That's the little acronym or whatever. But once I discovered this on my own hair about a year ago, I put it on Hairstylist Education Forum, and lo and behold, a year later, I hear people like from other countries saying, "Hey, have you heard?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did hear about that." But it's funny, but that's the way, and you can watch the video, and that I guess outlines it a little bit further than me answering the question right now.
Okay. From Dasha in Thornton, Colorado, how do you transition smoothly between different colors when you're, say, ready to try a new color, if someone wants to shift gears in their color palette?
Sure. So there's a couple different ways to go about it. I'll use Kat, the model, and the client for this webinar. If she came back in, first of all, you just need to let it run its course. Best case scenario is that you would let it fade for like 4 to 6, 7, whatever weeks. And if they know they don't want that color palette anymore, tell them they can start using hot water and shampooing more frequently to sort of help out the cause on their end of it and have them remove as much pigment as possible. And if they want to try something completely different, then you can either use the clear method that I was talking about in the last question or the low volume lightener and developer and bump some of that yellow and all that warmth out a little bit more, and then next time you can do a silver or a blue or pastel or something. So that's one way if you want to completely switch gears. You don't have to worry about picking up the same exact sections. Just have fun with it the second time or the third time, just like you did the first time. Or if you want to touch up what was done and you don't want to completely switch gears, then just basically reapply like I did in this webinar. So it's pretty simple and another way foolproof. You don't have to duplicate it 100%. Just have fun with it.
Right. And you touched on this a little bit. What would be the lasting tips on this, how to get the color to take evenly and not spotty? Maggie from Leawood, Kansas wants to know.
Hey, Maggie. Well, like I mentioned with the chameleon color technique, you're using multiple shades, so you sort of decrease the chance of it coming across spotty or splotchy anywhere that you can even visibly tell. So the technique itself makes it easier, but so just make sure that the palette or the canvas is completely dry, as healthy as possible. So that's your, healthy, reliable surface, and oversaturate. I'm not talking about like slop so much on it's dripping, but make sure you're using ample product and you're saturating, and don't really worry about the cost of an extra couple of tubes. You want to make sure there's enough pigment on the hair to avoid any splotchiness.
Okay. And from a creative perspective, Sylvia in Hobbs, New Mexico is curious, what inspires you and how do you come up with those different techniques?
Everything. I draw inspiration from everywhere and everything. Fashion, music, nature, other artists, everywhere. Like I said, I've got so many photos on my camera. I'll see a sunset, or I'll see a flower, I'll see a snake or a bug or an outfit. I get all kinds of inspiration. And to be honest with you, when it comes to what am I going to do next, I'll look through my Instagram or my body of work, and I'm like, man, I did a lot of pink the last couple of times. I'm getting sort of sick of pink. Let me do a purple. So I'll just want to keep my portfolio looking diverse and different. And if I get bored with one color, that sort of sparks my interest to create another color palette or scheme.
I think that sounds like a lot of things we do in life. You want to keep boredom away, then you start becoming adventurous and start looking at new ways to do different things. That's excellent. From Blanca in Las Vegas, New Mexico, how do you know which vibrant colors will look good on clients? Do you look at their skin, their eyes? Do you just listen to what they want? How do you go about this?
Unless it's something incredibly extreme, like they've got the reddest, rosiest face ever, like something extreme, like rosacea almost, or and then they want like orange or yellow. Like, don't do that. There's some pretty basic stuff that you need to be mindful of, but otherwise, I feel like if it's the appropriate technique, almost where you have that base color, like I said, sort of anchors it and makes it look a little bit more natural with their facial features and their eyebrows, any color almost looks good on everybody if done right. This girl here, she, like I said, she's like Asian background, Korean. She has dark eyebrows, dark eyes, and I've got oranges and yellows and corals, and it looks great on her. I think that putting the raspberry down by the base like that, again, anchors and gives it that depth that sort of ties it all together, instead of having a bright orange, let's say, next to her scalp and it looking potentially clownish or something. Yeah, I think any color will look good on anybody if done the right way.
And then probably it would seem natural that their personality comes into play with it too. They need to wear it comfortably and be happy with it. So if there's someone who's into cool tones and they love cool shades and it makes them feel good, if they're a hot, fiery tamale and they love those warm shades, then kind of temper the tones, I would think, to their personality and their artistic desire, because it seems obvious that someone who wants to express themselves through artistic hair color certainly wants to live that role as well. So that's great.
Yeah.
From Caitlin in Houston. I'm sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that you want to, when it comes to a client in a bright color, you want the client to wear the color, not have the color wear the client. So just make sure you're gauging what they're comfortable with before. And so no matter if it's purple or pink or whatever it is, the intensity of it, make sure you have that talk with them, whatever they're comfortable with. Okay, Caitlin, I'm sorry.
Caitlin, no worries, in Houston, Texas. How would you market these colors and techniques in a salon that has a modest clientele? How do you get people to experiment?
Well, I've had so many people say, how have you been able to do all of this bright color and have the body of work that you have now living where you live? Or how can I do it living in a small town? I live in a very, very small northwestern Florida town. It's little, it's conservative, it's considered the Bible Belt, and if I can have made this niche that I've made for myself, you all can make it too, no matter where you're at. And when I say that there are people, no matter where you are right now, that want this so badly, but they just don't know where to get it, you would not believe me. So you sort of have to jump in first by getting a model, or putting it out on Facebook or Instagram, like, someone be my model, and start building this type of work in your portfolio. And I guarantee you, when people start seeing that you can do it and you enjoy doing it, you do it well, and you're offering this type of color, you'll be surprised by how many people will actually want it. People you wouldn't expect, conservative people, people from a different, age or background, whatever, demographic. There are more people than you know right now that want it that you don't know yet.
Well,
so just get it out there.
I'm loving. We have an attendee that just made the comment, if they have a senior with white hair and you just want to feather in some pink or some color, it's amazing how many people are doing that, and that is triggering an avalanche of acceptance. And can we tell Christy real quick, how would you feather in just a few strands of pink? How would you do that on white hair?
If she's talking about an elderly client with naturally white hair, there's some technicals. It isn't all fun and games all the time. So the fact that their hair is naturally void of pigment, the color is not going to stick to it. So you have to etch it. You have to use a low-volume developer and lightener and open that cuticle a little bit. So that's the technical part of it. So even though it's white, you have to lift it a little bit, and then you could, foil some pieces in or freehand the tips or in the bangs or whatever. But make sure you don't go really super dark straight out of the tube. If it's something like they've never had it before and you're incorporating like a pop of color, start on the lighter end of it. Dilute it with clear, and start them small and then build up to something more wild. But usually if they'll ask for it, they're going to get it, they're going to want it again, they're going to love it. And the one thing I find that people, why they get turned off, is they'll have that naysayer, whether it's somebody that's hating on them or a spouse that's, not into the crazy stuff. They'll love it until they go home, and then they'll be like, oh, I don't know about that. So, it's just one of those things. But that's how you get started. Just put a little pop in there and see how they're going to gauge it.
Mm-hmm. And then how much time, how do you know how to schedule for the fashion services and what to charge for, say, just the pops versus the whole head? Do you have any suggestions on how people should approach this?
Well, you don't want to rush it, that's for sure. Like I said, if you have your book very, like if you're pretty packed in your book and you only have 2 hours on your book for something like what I did today, what I showed you guys today, you are probably, you're definitely, I'll say it that way, you're going to be in a double book situation. So if you are comfortable with that, then you can pre-lighten your first client, and while that client is pre-lightening, then you can stagger or juggle and apply the next, and go about it that way, because it's going to take time. There's no way to speed this up, or you'll end up in a position of damaging the hair or not lifting to the appropriate level, or you just can't rush past the process like this. So your clients will know that it takes time, and because it takes time, you are to charge accordingly. And it's up to your region, whether or not you, what exactly you charge. If I have to pre-lighten, that's a double-step process, and I start my prices at $175 for that, and then depending on the density and the length of their hair and the complexity of what I'm doing and the lifting and everything, it could go upwards to $300. And that's still, to be honest with you, sometimes on the low end for all the work that I have to do, but you have to gauge it for your region. So just determine what is the average, I guess, for where you live, and charge accordingly and book accordingly. So if you're doing this for the first time, block off 5 or 6 hours, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But just think about that beautiful image that you're going to get for your portfolio, and all the love and the time and the work you put into it, and how happy your client's going to be.
That makes great, super sense. From Ashley in San Antonio, what are your tips for this great styling work that we see you do? What type of products or genre of products and tools do you prefer to use?
Well, when it comes to styling, I know I've been pretty blasé the whole time about, just throw this color on if you want to and do it because it feels right. When it comes to styling, I'm very OCD. I don't want to have spent all this time getting this color looking on point and, being vibrant and pretty and everything, and then drop the ball when it comes to styling and have the hair appear to have flyaways and look dry or dull or whatever. So I put some major muscle into it, and I flat iron and I blow dry, and I make sure the styling's really on point. So I will use my serums, like I said. Let's see here. Joico makes one. Restorative oil, I think is what it is, the K-Pack restorative oil. I'll use that. And then Kenra blow dry spray. And just for detailing and adding shine and making the flyaway sort of appear less or not be there, I'll use Kenra Taffy. It's purple, and it literally smells like delicious candy or taffy. So I'll use those, and then like a light hairspray. I'll spray in my hand or my comb or my brush, and I'll just follow up, by running it through the hair to make sure it's a mirror finish or really shiny. So that is where I really take my time and I become OCD, is for the finishing and the styling and the photo taking.
Oh, that's excellent, and it makes great sense when you've invested that much time and work into that color process that you take just as much pride in what you're doing to finish it out. Several questions. How do I get a copy of the recording of this? Just one quick reminder to everyone who's still out there with us. Within a couple business days, you'll receive an email from Mary behind the chair that will have the playback link and the e-diploma for attending the class. So keep an eye in your email inbox, the email that you use to purchase the webinar. That brings us to the end. We have a couple closing thoughts here real quick for you, and then Rebecca is going to come back and give us her last words for the evening. Just a few very fast reminders. Come join us Sunday, March 22nd. At Stylist Choice Awards in Chicago at the Erie Crown Theater, McCormick Place Lakeside Center. Tickets are still available at behindthechair.com/SCA, or you can call our 800 number there, but go online, behindthechair.com/SCA. Come see Guy Tang in Chicago, March 22nd, again at the Erie Crown Theater on Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. There are limited tickets available, and Rebecca will be working with Guy at this event.
Woo-hoo.
And then, yes, ma'am. And then we have Stephanie Brinkerhoff on Monday, March 23rd, over in the Skyline Ballroom at McCormick Place West, Level 3. If you have not heard of Steph, where have you been? Stephanie has over 5 million Pinterest followers. She truly is the most famous upstyling and wedding specialist in the social media world. So we would love to see you in Chicago for Steph's class. More information and tickets at behindthechair.com/Chicago. And finally, Color Cut and Style 2015 is just around the corner in September. Tickets will be going on sale very soon. If you go to behindthechair.com/theshow, you can sign up to get the email updates as soon as those tickets hit the street and go live, so that you can join us in New Orleans this coming September. Let's see. That brings us to our final thoughts. We're never more than a click away on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. Follow Behind the Chair, and just an appropriate time to bring Rebecca back and thank her so much for being with us. And Rebecca, what would be the closing thoughts you would leave with everyone?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys so much for sitting with me for this amount of time and talking and just letting me personally do what I love to do, and I know a lot of you as well love to do it. That's why you're listening to me right now. But just have fun. Don't overthink this type of color. Just just enjoy every moment of it, because we really do have an amazing career and an amazing profession, and try to be a little bit more positive when you're thinking about tackling these colors, and all the hard work you put in will be rewarded. You know, watch The Secret. I'm such a nerd. I'm all about that. Positive thinking. There's a movie on Instagram, or no, what the heck is it? Netflix. There's a book that changed my life. It's all about positivity and like meeting your goals. So yes, thank you guys so much, and keep following me on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll talk more about it hopefully at one of these shows coming up.
Yes, Chicago or New Orleans. So thank you so much, your creativity and your time this evening. If you didn't get all your questions answered, as we had just too many streaming to field them all, please reach out to Rebecca on any of those networking social sites that she shared with you. And remember, you'll receive your playback link in the next couple of days. All right, then, on behalf of all of us at BTC, thanks for sharing your time with us. And Rebecca, and everyone else, have a beautiful evening.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.